Hi, everyone, and welcome to another roofing contractor and walls and ceilings legal insights update. I'm roofing contractor editor Art Eisner, and I'm happy to be joined today by RC editorial director Rick D'Amato, and of course, Trent Cotney, CEO of Cotney Construction Law. Trent is one of the leading legal experts in the roofing and construction trades, and he represents contractors and associations across the country and now in Canada. Trent, we always appreciate the time you give back to us and the industry. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So let's start with the news of the day or the time. The Supreme Court confirmation hearings are underway, as we talked about before. Are you seeing pretty much what you've expected so far, or what's been your take on that process so far?
Yeah, Art and Rick, it's very interesting watching these confirmation hearings, and I watch it almost as in a different way than most people watch it, because I'm always curious about the politics of things. Amy Barrett's doing a fantastic job in fielding questions and in answering like a lawyer. You can see that legal background there, and a lot of the questions are politically motivated. There's a lot of speeches that occur before some of these questions, but I think overall she's handling herself very well, and it's basically as I kind of anticipated. Some interesting. She's really been pushed hard on two issues. One is Roe versus Wade and abortion, and the second is Obamacare. And I think those questions are when you look at it. She stumbled a little bit on one, but overall, I think she's really navigated it pretty well and basically punted and saying, I'm not in a position to judge any cases right now because I don't have anything in front of me. And I don't want to speak out of turn, which is something that Justice Ginsburg used herself during her nomination process. So it's a great tactic, and I think we'll probably see more of the same until it's completed.
Right, a smart approach, no doubt. As far as those two issues are concerned, one having to deal more with business than the other, any takeaways from contractors that you could see just based on the coverage you've been taking in?
Yeah, I do think that if the opportunity arises to repeal a portion of Obamacare, which it certainly will, given the right, it takes a lot to get up to the Supreme Court. Okay, it is not easy. It is very, very difficult to have an issue that arises on a trial court level that is then appealable to the next level, then appealable to the next level after that. Okay, most of the time what appeals courts do is they only look at 1 to 3% of the cases that come in. The rest they just say affirm, and it goes back down to where it was. So getting a case up to that point that is perfectly designed to repeal Obamacare is something that I anticipate will happen. There's something in front of the court right now that could potentially affect that. But if it doesn't, then I anticipate that you're going to see more. And I do think that she will err on the side of repealing it rather than keeping it in place. So you never know, but that's kind of what I think right now.
All right. Well, no shortage of news coming out of Washington. You're making some too. You just announced a new partnership with roofing industry veteran Craig Breithaupt. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. I've got tremendous respect for Craig Breithaupt. I've known him for years, as have you guys and everybody in the industry. Fabulous speaker, well-known lobbyist for the industry up in D.C. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we could advocate for the interest of our clients in the roofing industry, but for the industry as a whole on the DC level. And Craig is clearly the guy that's going to assist us doing that. The other thing that we're interested in doing is getting his insight on what the issues are, having us be able to tell our customers and our clients about that. And from a key perspective, we want to get in front of the Department of Labor and OSHA to deal with a lot of those issues that we see that are affecting roofing contractors. So very excited to work with Craig. He is a brilliant man. I've really enjoyed working with him over the years, and now I get to work even closer with him. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have him as part of our team.
All right. Well, certainly that sounds like a formidable partnership. More to come on that one. As I was watching the news out of Washington also, we did see some changes from the SBA simplifying some of the regulations on the Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness application. Is that something you can help contractors kind of, or at least briefly touch on?
Sure. So the SBA, throughout this whole process, it's been a mess. Like we've talked about it before. You know, the SBA and the Department of Treasury have put out a variety of guidance, and it's been a moving ball, and it will continue to be that. And it's interesting. You know, Art, I had conversations earlier this week with two big banks, and talked to them about where they were in the process, and they said we haven't even really started yet. You know, maybe one or two applications. Like we can't figure some of the stuff out ourselves. So what the SBA did, to get back to your question, the guidance is they're trying to simplify some of it. So they said, look, if you've got a loan under 50,000, then you can go through this easy process, which is very similar to like a 1040 easy, where you fill it's a truncated form. Okay. I've also heard some things that said, look, if you didn't engage in any layoffs, or you rehired all the people that you fired to begin with, it's going to be a streamlined process. But here are some things that, look, again, I'm not a betting man, thank God, because based on some of our past conversations, I would have lost. But I do think that what's going to happen is you will see banks not be in a position to offer any kind of guidance with forgiveness well into the first quarter. What this is going to mean for roofing contractors is a little bit of a gamble, because as this thing continues to go, they may end up having to file their tax returns before knowing 100% whether or not forgiveness has been issued or not. That's interesting, because it's still hanging out there as to whether or not it is a deductible expense. Okay. So a lot of different things up in the air. This is something that contractors, anybody listening to this, you really need to pay attention to this if you took out a PPP loan, and continue to pay attention to what's going on in DC. I'm optimistic that hopefully we will hear something here towards the end of the year. I do anticipate that the election will not be over, in November. I think there's going to be some ongoing challenges, some ongoing things that will happen that may move people away from being able to address some of these Paycheck Protection Program issues. But ultimately, I think we're going to get more guidance at the end of the year.
Got it. And obviously now, perhaps with Craig on your side, that may be something to talk about for next year if in fact the situation arises like you talked about.
Right.
Is there, I do want to switch gears a little bit. You're participating in the NRCA's virtual legal conference this year. Can you give us a sense of what's on the top of contractors' minds legally?
So, kudos to NRCA, Allison and Ann and all of NRCA staff, and George Patterson and the NRCA Legal Committee. We've all put together some great webinars for everyone this year. We've got some great speakers in addition to myself and a lot of my team speaking. We've got Stephen Phillips and Philip Siegel. Mark Graham is presenting a couple of things, and, they're all timely topics. I did one today on residential contract provisions. We had some great questions. And that's the kind of thing I like. I like being able to, even digitally interface with an audience, so that we're providing not just academic value, but actual pragmatic value, to where we can help contractors out in the field.
Got it. So can you give us some examples, or what are you hearing from contractors, say, this week overall?
Sure. So, one of the things that we like to do is really track data here. And I'll give you an example. Like we track the types of disputes that we have. We track the number of defenses that we have. And here's an interesting statistic that I'll share with the audience. We have roughly 336 active litigation cases as of yesterday. Okay, I got that stat in preparation for some of the webinars I was doing. Of that, roughly 24 to 26%, I don't remember the exact, 26% of those cases, roughly 87 of them involve delays. That is a 14% increase year over year. Okay. So if I'm looking at that, when I'm gathering this data on disputes, one of the things I'm looking for is trends. And the trend here, if it were 5%, that's within the margin of error. 14% suggests to me that there are increased delay claims that are resulting from COVID-19, protests, wildfires, whatever it might be, and that these are causing damages to occur or to be assessed against contractors. So that is a trend that I definitely think contractors need to pay attention to. It is not a coincidence that we've gone up 14% year over year. There's just no way that you would have that kind of jump if there wasn't something that was systematically happening. And, at least based on my initial view of those cases, it's COVID-19 related delays.
Wow. And so that number potentially is going to be higher by year's end.
Absolutely.
That trend?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, we track I guarantee if I go back now, we were at 336, we're probably at 339. And, and what I make sure that we do is as we get cases in, we track each of the claims that are mentioned. And as we assert defenses, we also add that into the mix. So, we've had a lot of really interesting data that's come of that because with and this is nationwide, this is not just Florida, it gives us a real understanding of what the issues are in the industry. And then what that allows me to do is allows me to write content on it, talk about it, make sure that we're out ahead of whatever those issues are.
Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Trent, glad you're here. Always a pleasure. Thanks for being here, and thanks to the audience and listeners for joining us today. Now, this fall, the usual calls that we all get to go get our flu shots, and I've had mine. Mickey's had hers. We're people about this, and in light of our pandemic, is that taking on?
I think it has, in that it's a lot of the symptoms are the same. So you, as an employer, you're in a much better position if you offer that as a benefit. Last year, we had someone come in and offer flu shots to everybody here in the office. You can encourage people to do that, because if you don't, what could potentially happen is you've got someone that is exhibiting the same symptoms that you have to quarantine. There's a lag in testing. By the time they get the test back, you've already eaten up that much in production time. So it makes sense for people to get the flu shot this year, even if you don't think you're going to be exposed to it, because I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Thanks. And I think it's good advice this year, especially.
Mm-hmm.
The housing market's already been hammered, or at least the builder market has been hammered by increases in softwoods and plywoods. We're seeing some increases in shakiness in parts of the supply chain and roofing as well, asphalt roofing in particular, on top of the COVID concerns and workforce shortages. Now, on the other hand, the real estate market in most places, it certainly is here in Atlanta, continues to be strong. As with the last quarter of an election year, it's bound to be shaky at any rate. What do you make of Q1 2021?
So there's a few things that you mentioned there I think are worth touching on. One is I think you're going to continue to see material prices increase. I know that there was the aluminum tariff that came out, I think, earlier this week or last week. That's going to have a direct impact on sheet metal price. So if you're doing metal roofing, your cost of materials, base materials, are going to go up. Might not happen immediately, but it's going to happen. Okay, and depending on what happens in November, that could have an impact on the price of materials, especially commonly sourced materials. So it's something that you want to keep an eye on. The real estate market is very interesting because it's a little bit, I don't know how much I trust the strength of that market. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I can tell you here in Florida, for example, prices have not gone down one bit. And I think the reason is because there is less supply on the market. I think a lot of what I've heard from my friends that are realtors are they still demand top dollar because nobody is putting their house up. They're scared because of COVID. So what's interesting is that as we move into Q1, I do think that there might be a softening of that market. If there's a softening of that market, it could potentially affect residential re-roofs and residential construction. I think that the reckoning is coming. All the economic indicators that I've seen and continue to see, we've managed to kind of punt it. And I think the reason it's been punted was primarily because of the stimulus. I do think that regardless of who is in office, it does not matter what you do, there is going to be a downturn. And if I had to guess, I would say it's probably closer to the end of Q1. And I don't think it's going to necessarily be a huge drop all at once. I think that you may have some stock market volatility. but I think overall it's going to dip, and you may have rise and dip, and then by the end, this time next year, we're going to see that it's going to be down. I just don't see a way where we suddenly everything's okay again. I just don't see it. Now, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I would love to see that, but we've kind of prepared here as a business. And what I would encourage every contractor out there, I actually spoke on this earlier today, is, safeguard your AR, make sure that you are putting in protocols in place, that you are preparing for the worst. And that way, if something better happens, then at least you're prepared.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And it just seems like we remain in the calm storm. With all the new money that's been pumped into the markets, everything taken into consideration, something's going to give. And I pray it does give slowly and we're able to sort of overcome things. But I don't see how there will not be a reckoning of some sort. So where do you think is going to hit first in terms of the money supply? Are we going to be looking at inflation? Are we going to be looking at a retightening of that money supply or tax increases? What are we going to be looking at first, do you think?
So I'll take it in reverse order. I don't necessarily think tax increases will happen immediately after the election, regardless of who is in office. I think that's something that you let the dust settle. I don't think the dust will be settled in November. I think there's going to be ongoing challenges. I think there'll be a lot of stuff along those lines where it becomes more difficult to determine, who the winner is. And I'm hoping that's not the case, but, based on a lot of things I'm hearing so far, it might be. I do think that you're going to have a tightening of lending capability as a result of right now, I don't know whether it will be inflation. I did see that the Federal Reserve did make some additional changes in the last week or so to try to help the market. They don't do that unless they see some problems. Right now, we have more debt than we do revenue, and that's not a good business model. So something will happen. I anticipate that the lending market is going to be affected, similar to what happened in 09 and 10, maybe not as bad. And then what that's going to do is have a trickle down effect. You're already starting to see that with new right? New construction is all but dried up. Not all. I mean, there's the occasional one here or there, but most of the new construction developments, especially mixed use, they're dead in their tracks. And I think that what's going to happen is it's going to start affecting the individual consumer, right? The individual consumer right now is continuing to spend, and that's propping up residential construction. When that dies down because of either fear or lack of resources, that's when construction is usually going to be hit. Construction is usually the last to be hit. So it may take a while. We've seen it with hospitality already. We've seen it with retail. It's coming.
Bound to be that reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
So Trent, what else is on your mind this week? Give us a silver lining.
Yeah. So all that being said, I'm excited in a weird way. And let me tell you why. It is this last 6 months has been a blessing in disguise, and that's how I choose to look at it. Okay, it'd be real easy to hide under this table right here and assume the fetal position and rock myself to sleep. But at the end of the day, I recognize, and I think a lot of people out there recognize, that this is the evolution. This is a new world order. And for those contractors that are listening to this, if you embrace that change, if you embrace the technology, if you recognize we are never going back, okay, what it does is it gives you opportunity and a competitive advantage over your peers, okay? And that's how I kind of look at it. I look at it as a blessing because I have a lot of focus here that otherwise I'd be on a plane somewhere having to do something. So I'm in front of a keyboard all day, and that's always a dangerous thing. And I think contractors out there can look at it the same way. Use this as an opportunity to regroup, embrace technology. And this is, even though this is horrible, it's an opportunity. That's how I look at it. And I'll be honest with you, and don't share this with anybody else. Kind of excited in a weird, twisted way, because I think a lot's going to come out of this. I think it's going to force construction to evolve, and it needs to evolve. And it will be painful, but I think once we come out of it, it's going to be much better for everybody.
Well, I've got to acknowledge that the change is coming in our business, in the media business.
Mm-hmm.
Roofing contractors' business model has pivoted 180 degrees. We're still here. We're still bringing information, doing our best to help contractors succeed in their business and their life, just in a very different way than we did in 1981 when we started. So again, Trent, appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here. Art, I'm going to give it back to you.
Thanks, guys. Trent, where can contractors find out more?
You can always hit me up at tcotney@cotneysale.com. That's our website right there. Talk to anybody any time of the day. So.
All right. Well, thank you again, Trent, and for everyone else out there for joining us. Check out more coverage at wconline.com and roofingcontractor.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our free new digital edition by hitting the subscribe button up at the top right. Thanks again. Stay safe, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.